What is up, Ram fam? This is the DNVR Rams season preview presented by Saturday Neon. Saturday Neon designs and manufactures officially licensed collegiate logo LED signs, just like this amazing one that I have right next to me. Look at this thing. It is a work of art. It is beautiful. It is designed locally. The company is started and ran by a couple of buffs, but we can look past that because we love local businesses, and that's Saturday Neon. If you use the code DNVR, not only are you going to get 10% off your order, you can get one of these bad boys, put it right next to your bed so you always feel proud to be, but you're also going to get free shipping. It's just so clutch. I cannot be more thrilled to be working with Saturday Neon, and we're really stoked to have them as our presenting sponsors on this preview show. Y'all, it's been a tough one when it comes to football. Obviously a pretty disappointing season. Thank goodness basketball season is finally here, and there's just so much to talk about. The expectations for this team are through the roof. We'll get into that. We'll dive into the roster a little bit. But before we kind of dive into everything, I just wanted to briefly kind of go down memory lane a little bit and just talk about how we got here, because it wasn't that long ago when CSU was the basement of the Mountain West, when they were getting rolled by, everyone, Nevada, UNLV, San Diego State. Everybody was in a better place than they were. Now, for the first time ever, CSU is the preseason conference favorite, and so much of that has to do with recruitment and development. If you followed CSU basketball during the Larry Eustace era, it was just constant roster turnover. And the entire time he was there were only 2 players that played 4 full years for him. And it's so hard to establish continuity. It's so hard to establish, a system on offense or defense, which is why they didn't really have one. It was basically just, play really hard and rebound. That was basically the system. Now they've been able to implement their own offense. Defensively, they've taken massive strides. We'll get into that a little bit as well. But, going into this year, we have Adam Thistlewood and Kendall Moore. They obviously came in year 1 under Nico Medved. They're now in their 4th year in the program. You've got Roddy, Stevens, Tanjay, Thomas, Moores, all of these people that are in year 3. You've got, Rivera and Jennison in year 2. When you're able to have these guys in the system year in and year out, you're just able to do things that you can't when you're replacing a bunch of guys with JUCO players every year. And obviously no disrespect, because you can get a lot of talent that way, but it just in terms of establishing that consistency year in and year out on both sides of the ball, it's pretty hard to win that way. And I think that's why when you look around the Mountain West, you look at programs like San Diego State, New Mexico in their heyday, UNLV. When they were really winning well, it's because they were able to recruit high school players. That is what CSU has finally been able to do under Nico Medved, under Ali Farouk-Vanesh, and, J.R. Blunt, Dave Thorson, some of these other guys who are now no longer on staff after taking P5 jobs, but played a big part in helping build this program up, that have, played a big part in helping develop. In year 1, we saw Nico Carvacho take massive strides. Year 2, we saw Isaiah Stevens and David Roddy take big strides, especially on the defensive side. We always knew what those guys were going to be able to do with the ball in their hands. Those guys are scorers. They're going to be able to beat you from 3. They're going to be able to get to the hoop. It all really comes down to the defensive side, and that's kind of where I think CSU is going to live and die this year, is by that defensive improvement. They flirted at times with being a top 50 team last year in terms of defensive efficiency. Ended up finishing right around 75th. That's not going to be good enough on a night-to-night basis if they really want to be able to make a splash this year. And let's be real, the expectations for CSU are NCAA tournament or bust. And again, we can kind of get into some of the expectations down the line, but if the Rams are going to be able to hang, with Oral Roberts, if they're going to be able to beat some of these NCAA tournament teams, both in their conference and outside of it, being able to make that jump and take that leap, I think being a top 50 defensive team this year, it's going to be paramount. I've talked about it with Roddy. I've talked about it with Nico Medved, Ali, some of the other players as well. They've all been like, last year the effort was there, but there would just be these lapses, for 2-3 minutes where they would allow the other team to go on, a 10-0 run, an 11-0 run. And if you want to be a 20-plus win team again, and you want to be at the top of the conference, you just got to get rid of those. Is it going to be perfect every night? No. Hopefully you aren't going to have any weird games like St. Mary's last year where neither team could make a bucket. But you got to have some consistency, and I think that they're going to be able to do it this year. A big part of that stems from the veterans. Obviously, Kendall Moore, he's a defensive bulldog. He's so great because he plays physical man defense. He always leads the team in steals. Adam Thistlewood, he's been a big factor in that as well. He's grown so much as a wing defender, and it's been really big for this team, and being able to hang with some of these teams that have elite scorers. And when you have those guys that you can lean on defensively, when you also have athletes like Isaiah Stevens and David Roddy, I mean, it just makes it so hard to score on you. Where I really want to see CSU take a leap, especially on the defensive side, though, is in the paint. You know, they got bullied by some of the bigger teams last year, going up against guys like Neemias Queta, Utah State. You know, teams with a lot of size kind of really gave the Rams some trouble. And, you know, CSU, they're not the biggest roster in the world. James Moore's, Deshaun Thomas, they're not small dudes, but Deshaun probably built more like a stretch four, at least in the NBA. James definitely a true five, but how those guys are able to kind of take their game to the next level and defend against some of these teams with great length, and a great example would be San Diego State. I really think that's going to dictate whether CSU ends up being the best team in the Mountain West, or they just kind of float around contention, which is where they were last year. Obviously a really good team, but they didn't really separate themselves from the rest of the pack. If they can make that defensive improvement, I think they're able to separate themselves this year, and that's going to be a big factor. And kind of with that in mind, let's just get into some of the strengths and weaknesses of this group as a whole. Obviously a very experienced roster, a lot of returning talent. The continuity of the team is a big deal, but when you look at the strengths, you know, this is a really athletic bunch. I think for them to, you know, beat some of these teams and maybe offset the height differential, I want to see them get out and running. And then that kind of plays into transition offense, which is another thing they do really well. They got guards that are not afraid to get it, that are not afraid to get in the weeds. You know, they'll drive to the hoop, they'll go at it with the big guys. They have to take advantage of that. You have one of the highest elevations at Moby Arena, not quite as high as Laramie. That's a big advantage for you. You know, you've got teams from the West Coast coming. You've got teams from all across the country coming. Run them off the floor. I mean, I think that's what the Nuggets did during their heyday. You know, they were able to just kind of use the advantages they have. Free throw shooting, much like the Buffs last year. CSU was a tremendous free throw shooting team. And when you're getting to the hoop, when you're playing in transition, it naturally leads to a lot of opportunities because it's kind of just like, well, we can either let them go to the hoop or we can hack them. Last year, they took advantage of those free throws, and actually, coincidentally, teams shot free throws very poorly against CSU, so it was kind of a strength both ways. Are they going to be able to count on other teams missing so many free throws? Probably not, but what you can bank on is making your own. At least that's what we're hoping. As far as weaknesses go, I've already gotten into it a little bit, but this team, they're just not the biggest in the world, and it's not a huge deal, especially in the Mountain West. But when you do play teams like Alabama, Mississippi State, you know, it's really going to test them, especially at the 4 or the 5. You love what David Roddy does, but it's just tough when you're asking somebody who's 6'5" to be banging in the paint with dudes that are 6'9", 6'10". How they're able to kind of adjust to that, we will see. And I really like what Medved's done in the past. They've been willing to go small ball lineups and, again, you know, run teams off the floor. But the lack of size, I would say it is one of this team's greatest weaknesses, as was the offensive rebounding. I mean, last year, they ranked 315th in the country. Now, some of that had to do with the coaches not really wanting them to crash the glass. It was kind of an emphasis to get back defensively. That's great. I mean, especially when you're trying to improve on that end and be more consistent. At times, if you're always crashing the glass, it can lead to some better opportunities for the other team. But I just think if you can create some more second chance opportunities, it's really going to help this Rams team out. They can shoot from three. Like I said, they can get to the hoop. Just create a couple of more opportunities, and it's really going to open things up. They were a great defensive rebounding team last year. This year, I'd like to see them do the same thing on the offensive glass. Just kind of increase it. More than 7.6 per game. That's a big deal to me. Expectation-wise, if they are able to play to their strengths, if they're able to kind of offset some of these weaknesses, I think it's fair to assume that this is the best CSU basketball team that there's been in the last decade, even better than Larry Stacey's first year when he got to play with Tim Miles' team. I mean, Dorian Green, Colton Iverson, Pierce Hornung, all those guys. That was a great team. they didn't have the raw talent that this team has. I mean, this team has guys that could play anywhere in the country. A lot of those guys back in the day, they were so great because they played together for so long. They played so hard. This team has a lot of those characteristics as well, but they're just also dang good, and that's what makes them really fun to watch. I am really pumped. For the first time ever, they're the preseason conference favorites, but with that, it kind of puts a target on your back, and how CSU is able to deal with that, I think, is going to be pretty interesting, because this is the first time in close to a decade where there have been legitimate expectations. Last year, there was hope that they would be a competitive team. They were. They won 20 games, even despite getting a lot of their schedule canceled, which is pretty dang impressive. But this year, I mean, they scheduled up. They really scheduled up, and it's going to be a tough situation, like surviving Max Abmas and Oral Roberts. St. Mary's comes to town. They have neutral games against Tulsa and Mississippi State. And this non-conference schedule, man, it's just going to be really tough. Tuesday night, you've obviously got Oral Roberts coming to town in the opener. It's a bummer that this game is only streaming on Stadium. I really wish that they would have played it on Wednesday instead, actually, just because I think it would have been less competition with games across the country. But Oral Roberts and Max Abmas, who was an All-American last year, he won the scoring title. How they're able to deal with him, a guy that can really just get hot at any moment. It's going to be a great test right off the bat, because last year, we saw when CSU went against some elite scorers, Grant Sherfield at Nevada, for example, they were kind of able to get theirs. And I wonder, does CSU, do they try and just eliminate him and be like, you got to beat us with anybody but him? Or do they do the opposite and be like, you want to know what? This dude's an All-American. He's going to get his buckets no matter what he does. He's basically the Steph Curry of college basketball right now. Do we let him do his thing and we shut down everything else? It's going to be really interesting. But the fact that they're playing this team right off the bat, game one, Moby Arena, it just kind of sets the tone for what this season is supposed to be. And that's an interesting one. That's a fun one. And it's one where you're nationally relevant. And that's super exciting as a CSU fan. Some of the other non-conference games I'm really looking forward to. Obviously, they're playing in the Paradise Jam November 19th through the 22nd down in the Virgin Islands. You open up against Bradley. You have a potential to play Creighton in that one. Could also play CU in the final if it plays out that way. Unfortunate that CSU and CU will only play this year if it happens in that tournament setting. I just think for local interest, that's a game that should happen every year no matter what. It didn't work out that way. Hopefully they're able to get it back on the schedule next year. A couple of teams you don't want to sleep on as far as this non-conference schedule goes, though. The St. Mary's game on December 4th. Obviously, the Rams lost to them last year. They come back to Moby this year. I think St. Mary's is quietly a sleeper in the West Coast Conference. Probably a borderline tournament team. You got to win that game in early December, especially because after it, you've got some really tough games against Mississippi State and Tulsa. Both of those games are out in the Dallas area. If you're wondering why the Tulsa game is in Dallas instead of here, it was kind of a scheduling conflict. Originally, that was supposed to be played at Ball Arena. It wasn't going to work out with the way that the Nuggets and the Avs were, so then they tried to move it to the Budweiser Event Center. Originally, Tulsa agreed to it, and then they backed out at the last minute. They had the right to do so. I will say it looks kind of lame, in my opinion, just because CSU played Tulsa in Oklahoma City, and now the second game of the agreement is played in Dallas. How is that fair? But it is what it is. It's probably going to be a quad 3 game. That's going to be a nice test for, can you beat a good team sandwiched in between some of the premier matchups? Because you've got Northern Colorado, who deceptively could be a tournament team. They have added a ton of talent there. And then obviously you close out against Alabama. But in between there, you've got Tulsa, Mississippi State, and St. Mary's. And I think all of those games are winnable. All of them are great for your NCAA tournament resume. But all of them are really challenging. And that's going to be the big thing about CSU is, they could jump out to a really hot start, win a bunch of these games, and shoot into the top 25 right away. They could also lose a couple of them just because they're playing really quality teams. And at that point, people are going to probably be skeptical and, do they have it? But what I want to preach is just patience. I do think that CSU is going to fare pretty well in this non-conference slate just because of the experience that they have on the roster and the talent that they have. But I'm not going to panic when at some point they have a little struggle. I mean, it's just inevitable in a college basketball season. And unless you're one of those rare teams that runs the table, which almost never happens in the Mountain West. I mean, San Diego State came really close a couple of years ago, and even they weren't able to do it. You got to let it play out. Come March, this is going to be such a dangerous team. This is going to be a team that makes the NCAA tournament. I fully expect it. I'm actually going to play a game here shortly with Eric Weedham where we kind of do a snake draft on the perfect CSU basketball season, and there's a lot of things that could happen. I mean, you haven't won the Mountain West tournament in a long time. You haven't won the Mountain West season ever, the regular season title. You can kind of debate which is more important. Honestly, I would like to see them win the regular season title. I think it just, to have that year's worth of consistency, I think is going to be big for them come NCAA tournament time. You don't want to be on the outside looking in again like last year. And I don't think they will. You have the talent, you have the schedule to get the attention necessary. How do you respond, And that's kind of where we're at right now. How does this team build off what they have done the last couple of years, back-to-back 20-win seasons? They played in big-time games. They upset San Diego State on the road. But now you got to do it on a nightly basis, and that's a really tough position to be in. But I think they have the horses to get it done, and I'm very much looking forward to this basketball season. Make sure that you keep up with everything we do throughout the year. I'm going to have podcasts. I'll do a live show once a week. Obviously, plenty of written content. It is going to be an absolute blast. And we got an NLI deal with David Roddy. So make sure you also keep an eye out for the shirt, which is coming very soon. Got a Trey McBride shirt still. Order those. You don't want to miss out. Guy's such a beast, man. Such a beast. I know that has nothing to do with this, but there's never not a good time to shout out Trey McBride. Anyways, let's get into the snake draft with Eric Weedham and go back and forth on creating the perfect season. You guys can determine who won. We'll have you guys vote on social media or something. All right. I got my main man, Eric Weedham, a.k.a. the D-Line, with me. Proud CSU alum.
That's right. I'm proud to be. I like me with a "the" in front of it. The D-Line. It's weird enough that my nickname that I didn't choose, I chose my company name, and then it became my nickname. And sometimes my nickname includes the word "co," D-Line Co. But the D-Line Co., it takes it to a whole other level. I'm here for it.
Well, you're not just any regular D-Line.
That's true.
The D-Line.
You know what the greatest thing is? That when I watch or when I'm on the timeline and there's a football game going on, oftentimes people will be like, man, D-Line's really bringing it. And I'm like, I ain't really bringing it.
Well, Eric, I wanted to get you on here because I wanted to do a little snake draft on.
I'm so ready for
just
this.
The perfect basketball season.
I'm built for this.
That could mean a lot of different things, obviously. I mean, maybe they end up beating CU. Maybe they beat an SEC team. But you're the guest, so you have the first overall pick.
You're the number one pick in the perfect CSU season draft. D-Line selects winning the national championship. Let's go. That sounds perfect to me.
Why not?
Why not? Why not us?
Here's the thing about college basketball. Obviously unlikely, but it's possible.
It'd be perfect. Would it not?
You don't have to deal with the nonsense that is the college football playoff selection process, where you could potentially run the table back-to-back years and not even get a chance to play for a championship.
Makes me sick just to hear it.
In college basketball, if you make the tournament, you have a shot.
Cinderella, baby.
I was thinking realistically, but why not? Shoot for the stars, right?
Number one overall pick.
I love it. I mean, you might as well go big. I mean, at this point, it's tough to argue with win the national championship.
That's the number one overall pick every year.
But with the number 2 pick, we are going to go with have an All-American.
Oh, wow.
Which is...
It's a very moderate wish.
It's really tough. I mean, there's 5 of them.
You're not wrong. That's actually not that moderate. But, I mean, I guess just the bends I got from winning the national championship to having one good player.
Well, not just a good player. If you're an All-American, you're one of the best 5 players in the country.
Yeah, I think we all understand, Justin. I just want to understand. I want everyone to understand that I believe in this team.
So much so that you took them to win the national championship.
The daddy, bro.
All right. What are you going with your next pick?
It's a snake draft. It's your pick.
You're right. You're right. Well, might as well keep it simple. If we're winning the national championship, I'm assuming they also won the Mountain West. They are the preseason conference favorite. So let's go with win the Mountain West, which would,
good.
That would be obviously proof of a really successful season. It means you probably beat San Diego State at least once.
Hell yeah.
Hopefully got some revenge against Nevada
Duke.
after having to play a crappy game against them that cost them a tournament appearance last year. Thanks a lot, Craig Thompson.
Oh, man.
I just want to see this team come out on top because I think it would be an indicator of where they're at. San Diego State, that's a household brand. I want CSU basketball to be a household brand.
Let's go, dude.
If they win the national championship, they will definitely be a household brand.
People will be talking about this team. The streets will be talking about national championship winning Colorado State University.
If CSU wins a national championship, I will get a CSU tattoo.
Oh, you heard it here first.
I promise. If they win a national championship, I will get a CSU tattoo.
You know what? I will too.
Well, yeah,
on
we can go
my
together.
face.
Why not? We might as well go bold. I'll get Cam the Ram tattooed on my neck. No.
Yeah,
I will
whatever.
Get a CSU
whatever.
tattoo.
All right. My next pick in CSU Rams perfect season draft, I will take makes the tournament. They make the tournament. They're dancing.
I would
en
hope
route
so
to
if
winning
they
the
won.
national championship.
Otherwise, if they didn't make the tournament, it would be a bit of a weird championship. How would that happen? Everybody else got eliminated.
Well, I guess we should look at this as though each column represents one season. So I really should just go down the line of what it would take to get to the top. So yes, making the tournament imperative for my number one pick to have it. All right.
With the next pick, Eric, make the Final Four.
With my next pick, the CSU Rams men's basketball team snake draft perfect season, I will pick make the Final Four. Let's go. Put it on the board, Allie.
This exercise has been completely ruined.
Well, I don't understand. Why are you afraid to succeed?
I would say if you win the national championship, you shouldn't also get to go to the Final Four, but why not?
You should have laid some ground rules before we got into this.
It's true.
You had all these
It's
thoughts.
true. I didn't say any of these.
Not
beforehand.
one.
This is what you get. You can't always get what you want. Well, I'm not going to win this draft. It's tough to compete with what I'm going up against, but I would love to see CSU win the Paradise Classic, which if they do that, it means you're probably beating Creighton, potentially beating CU. It's a great national tournament. It's early in the season. It's the type of event that if you perform well, it just kind of gives you some prestige on your name. That's how college basketball works with all of this November, December games. No, they don't necessarily make or break you. I mean, they can, but it's really about just getting in the conversation. The Maui Classic, all these random tournaments that don't actually mean anything. Eric's going to take the Elite Eight next. So I guess for my final pick, I'm going to go with beat an SEC team, which would be really cool because they're playing Mississippi State and Alabama. Alabama is legitimately a national championship contender this year. They are really good. They play at an absurd pace. That game in Birmingham is going to be really cool. Don't know if I'm going to be able to go to that one in person yet. The travel prices are crazy, but who knows? Hopefully, really looking forward to that game. Eric, you might as well.
No. Listen, I'm gonna vary it up a little bit. Even though this season I've laid out has been, I think most would argue, perfect. It's followed the assignment to the letter. I will say, go undefeated. No, I will say, in a realistic way, I would like to see them beat CU. That would be fantastic.
That would be cool. It can only happen if they play in the Cayman Islands.
I know.
Or Virgin Islands,
I like what you laid out. I want there to be CU versus CSU competition every year. I want it to mean something. I want there to be some dumb boot thing like that we can pass back and forth. The Colorado the Colorado container.
Well, in soccer they play for the Colorado Cup.
Okay.
And that actually DU is a part of that as well. But every year those three, they kind of have you play CU in Boulder, and then you play DU in Denver, and then whoever ends out on top gets the Colorado Cup.
Man, I love this season I've laid out.
Yeah, I mean, if they
It's like a
if they
great
win
season.
a national championship and go to the Final Four, I think objectively, this is just my opinion, it would be
It's a perfect season,
a fun
my guy.
year that I would look back on fondly. I
Let's
think
look
I
at
would be satisfied.
Let's compare our two sides and like then also take into consideration what it says about our two personality types. So my top pick was to win the championship. Yours is to have one good player. I want to make the tournament. You want to win the Mountain West. I want to make the Final Four. You want to win the Paradise Classic.
To be fair, to beat CU, they would win the Paradise Classic.
I know. Well, to be the national champion, they would make. Listen. It all folds in. All the same, I'm a winner. Everyone knows it. I'm not afraid to let the world hear it.
I do think if we're going off what would be the most exciting season, Eric nailed it. He didn't really capture the spirit of what I was going for, but that's why I brought him on. Eric can't be,
I can't
you can't put him in a box.
No, dude. No, especially if we win that Colorado container against CU.
Colorado container. It's a
Just a
plastic box.
Yeah, it's just like a gold dipped box.
Half gold and half green.
Hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah. They're like, the containers stay at home.
Eric, before we wrap this up, just briefly, I just kind of wanted to ask you, and this is something we talked about once before on a post-game show for football, but Hoops audience here, obviously things have changed this year with the NLI deals. You have been able to work with these student athletes.
Yes.
You've gotten a chance to get to know David Roddy a little bit in the process of designing his shirt. How rewarding has this whole experience been?
It's cool. Like I was on a Zoom call with David Roddy, who now I think he would agree. He would say it more than me is my best friend.
Yeah, I mean, facts.
We've shared no less than 3 emails back and forth. One of them came at 11 o'clock at night.
That's
from
how you
him.
know. If somebody's responding to you post 9 p.m., especially email
After work hours.
They're thinking about you at
David, I think you're watching, and I know that you know that we're best friends now. I can't wait to hang out. You set the terms. I'll be there. It's fantastic. Honestly, though, like every one of these guys that I talk to, we laugh about how hilarious the idea is that somehow this was illegal up until this year. Like,
it's absurd.
It's completely absurd. I mean, it was like super rad to, be able to, especially with the McBride bros, since they were the guys we were able to actually get an autograph signing for. Nate Landman also, I mean, we haven't been able to do that yet, but just being able to see the public outpouring of support and, you cheer for these guys, but it's really cool to be able to show them directly that you care about and support them as people. Like, you buy their shirt, like, that means something. It's like, and you can tell it means something to them too. So from that standpoint, it's been fantastic. And from the standpoint of getting a new best friend, David Roddy, great.
Well, you will be able to get that new David Roddy shirt very soon.
Yep.
Rep Eric's best friend in Moby Arena. It always has been cool to me when I would see any of our DNVR products in Moby. And last year, I certainly saw plenty of our CSU gear. I saw some Border War shirts on campus this fall. Didn't get to see those in person because obviously fans couldn't go to the basketball games last year. But I'm super pumped. It's going to give me goosebumps when I see Roddy throw a dunk this year and I look down or look around.
He gives a high five to old Eric in the crowd.
Yeah, and he's dapping up Eric on the sidelines because Eric now sits courtside. Actually, he gets to sit with the team.
I'm just I'm like an honorary water boy with no duties.
But seriously, it's been such a rewarding experience. Obviously, I've gotten to know Trey McBride much better because of this whole ordeal. I've known David since CSU was recruiting him in high school. I was one of the first CSU people to interview him, so I already had that relationship, but I'm looking forward to establishing it even more. Looking forward to bringing you guys the best CSU content around. Make sure you follow my main man, Eric, a.k.a. the D-Line. Make sure you follow DNVR Rams, DNVR Sports, all that fun stuff. I'm Justin Michael. Shout out to Saturday Neon. Look at this gorgeous thing.
These things are like, they're like really, really well made. They're like really, sometimes you come across neon signs that are like kind of weird and sloppy, but these are I'm not sure
if
there's new technology.
Rolls Royce of
neon.
neon.
There's like clearly new technology involved because these things are precise. They look great.
Very cool. Can't wait to hang this bad boy up in my bedroom. Girlfriend doesn't know it yet, but it's going to happen. Anyways, I'm Justin Michael. Again, this is my main man, Eric, a.k.a. the D-Line. Thank you so much. Tune into everything we're doing this season. It's going to be an absolute blast. always proud to be a Ram.
Let's go.